After the shocking revelations surrounding Diddy, hip-hop fans barely had time to process the fallout before the spotlight swung toward another giant. Sean Jay-Z Carter. To the outside world, he's the consummate businessman, music mogul, art collector, sports agent, billionaire husband to global icon Beyoncé, and loving father to 3 photogenic children. Behind the scenes, however, a dispute has simmered for more than 14 years, threatening to upend that carefully curated image. The allegation is deceptively simple. A Philadelphia man named Rymir Satterthwaite says Jay-Z is his biological father, yet every request for a DNA test has been met, according to Rymir and his guardian, with silence, legal dodges, or outright intimidation. What began as a paternity claim has mutated into a saga of wealth versus truth, missing court files, and whispered threats that feel more Hollywood thriller than family dispute. Rymir's origin story traces back to his late mother, Wanda, who said she met a young, pre-fame Sean Carter in Brooklyn in 1992. Wanda was 15, maybe 16 years old, when, as she told it, she spent a single night with the future rap kingpin. Protection allegedly failed, and 9 months later she gave birth to a baby boy. She would never see Carter again. Friends later recalled that Wanda kept the identity of her son's father private for years out of fear nobody would believe her. But by the time Rymir reached 3rd grade, she sat him down and told him the name Jay-Z. Unlike the dramatic reveals you see on daytime television, this wasn't about tabloids or a quick payday. The family's finances remained modest, and for the next decade, Rymir grew up in Philadelphia, largely out of the limelight, carrying the knowledge in silence, while Jay-Z skyrocketed from Brooklyn hustler to international superstar. Everything changed in 2011. Rymir had turned 18, old enough to take legal matters into his own hands. The first suit was filed in New Jersey family court, the state where his mother had lived part-time, and where Rymir claimed Carter owned property. Under New Jersey statute, when a putative father refuses a court-ordered paternity test, the court is allowed to presume paternity. Rymir's legal guardian, Dr. Lily Coley, a paralegal by trade, believed the law was on their side. They requested a simple cheek swab, confident that if Jay-Z refused, the presumption alone would resolve the matter. But what followed looked less like standard family court than chess played on a board tilted by power. First came the procedural grenades. Carter's legal team argued the New Jersey court lacked jurisdiction because Jay-Z did not reside and held no property there. That claim alone stalled the case for months while the court considered venue. Then came sealed motions, ex parte conferences, and hearing dates that vanished off the docket. In several instances, Coley says she arrived at the courthouse only to discover entire files gone, checked out without a trace or sealed under orders she had never been served. Each setback forced Rymir to restart the process, pay new filing fees, and absorb fresh legal expenses he could barely afford. The presumption statute that looked so straightforward on paper now felt useless in practice. Outside the courthouse, the stakes grew darker. Dr. Coley recalls the first strange phone call arriving around 1:30 a.m. The line silent, caller ID blocked. A week later, an unmarked sedan idled outside her row house for hours. She jotted down the license number. It traced back to a rental company, paid in cash, no name attached. Then came the night Rymir's 1999 Acura was riddled with bullets while he visited a friend. The other cars on the block sat untouched. Police filed an incident report, but with no cameras and no witnesses willing to talk, the case went cold. Coley insists these events weren't random city violence. They always spiked whenever new motions hit the docket. Critics scoffed at the idea. Why would a billionaire risk violence when he could simply write a settlement check? Yet settlement is exactly what never arrived. Rymir maintains he never asked for money, and Coley's filings demanded no child support. They wanted recognition, not remuneration. A monetary offer would have undercut their foundational claim. This isn't about cash, it's about identity. If hush money was off the table, the next best deterrent was fear, or so Coley concluded. Whether those eerie incidents were orchestrated by professionals, overzealous fans, or coincidence, they achieved the same result: psychological pressure to quit. Meanwhile, Jay-Z's public life projected unshakable stability. He released chart-topping albums, sold portions of Tidal and Armand de Brignac champagne for nine-figure sums, posed with Blue Ivy at award shows, and championed prison reform as a philanthropist. Interviews showcased his evolution from street hustler to responsible family man who'd grown past ego and was intent on building generational wealth. That evolution, however, clashed with Rymir's account of a man unwilling even to acknowledge his existence. For Jay-Z's defenders, the lawsuit looked like an opportunistic shakedown. For skeptics, the silence smelled like laryngitis by design. By 2015, the case jumped back to Pennsylvania, Wanda's birthplace. Jurisdiction hearings dragged on another year before being tossed, again over technicalities. During that lull, Wanda's health deteriorated from complications related to lupus. According to Coley, Jay-Z's attorneys contacted Wanda's hospital room with documents they claimed would simplify matters. Wanda, recovering from a medically induced coma, allegedly signed forms removing Coley from the petition, leaving herself as the sole plaintiff despite being gravely ill. Weeks later, the court dismissed the suit because Wanda, bedridden, missed a hearing. Within months, she died, never seeing her son's quest move an inch forward. Her passing might have ended everything, but it galvanized Rymir. He refiled in 2018, this time supplying property records he said proved Jay-Z did own a New Jersey condominium through a holding LLC. If true, it undercut Carter's earlier jurisdiction argument. Yet, instead of proceeding to DNA, the court fixated on whether Rymir had standing without his mother. Hearings were scheduled, postponed, rescheduled, and eventually sealed from public view. Rymir exhausted his savings, launched a small crowdfunding page for legal fees, and took service industry jobs to keep the litigation alive. The fight aged him, friends say. He became quieter, more distrustful, always scanning mirrors for tailing cars. Then 2020 brought the pandemic and, with it, more delays. Virtual hearings pushed back 6 months at a time. Coley drafted what she called the Pro Se Legal Mistreatment Act, urging lawmakers to curb tactics large firms use to bury pro se litigants in paperwork. The proposed bill never reached committee, but it caught local press and briefly reignited interest. Online forums buzzed with speculation. Why not just swab and end it? Some fans theorized a positive result would cost Carter tens of millions in estate planning. Others countered that Rymir, now an adult, couldn't retroactively claim child support across multiple states. The statutory rape angle, however, loomed large. If Wanda had indeed been under New York's age of consent, 17, the fallout could transcend money and threaten Carter's clean image. By late 2023, attention swung to a separate civil lawsuit originally aimed at Sean "Diddy" Combs. An anonymous plaintiff alleged she was trafficked and sexually assaulted at age 13 by Combs, with Jay-Z present and complicit. Jay-Z's legal team blasted the claims as baseless. Still, the overlap was impossible to ignore. 2 minors, 2 hip-hop moguls, similar timelines. Rymir seized the moment, issuing a statement that read, "If Sean Carter is truly a champion of protecting children, he should start by acknowledging one who has begged for his recognition since 2011. The line ricocheted across social media, collecting likes from skeptical fans and indie journalists eager for the next hashtag #MeToo revelation. Finally, in June 2025, a family court judge in Newark ruled that lingering jurisdiction questions were moot. Rymir's petition satisfied residency requirements, and the defense could no longer cite lack of knowledge about the case. The order was blunt: submit to DNA testing or explain, under oath, why you cannot. For the first time, Jay-Z's team could not simply file for extension upon extension. A deadline was set for August 2025, and the clock ticked. Public relations experts debated strategy. If Carter complied and the test proved negative, critics would still ask why he spent 14 years avoiding it. If positive, the world's greatest dad narrative would fracture. Brand partners like Louis Vuitton and Pepsi might reconsider endorsements. Some pointed out a third scenario, more legal maneuvering to invalidate the order. Yet community advocates warned that any further stalling would confirm the worst suspicions. Investors, always allergic to reputational risk, might start measuring distance. Throughout all this, Beyoncé remained silent in public, but insiders whispered that she attended several private briefings with attorneys and crisis management consultants. Beyoncé has built her brand on female empowerment and family unity. An underage pregnancy bombshell connected to her husband could tarnish years of meticulously polished messaging. Was she urging Jay-Z to comply for damage control, or pushing harder to block disclosure? Only those inside the Carters' palatial mansions know. What is clear is that the couple's combined empire, spanning fashion, tech, sports and entertainment, is so vast that a single admissions of paternity might be survivable financially, yet catastrophic symbolically. Meanwhile, Rymir's daily life remains remarkably ordinary. He shares a modest apartment, works a retail job, and volunteers coaching youth basketball. Interviews reveal a soft-spoken man who occasionally flashes a shy smile, reminiscent, some say, of Jay-Z's grin in the Reasonable Doubt era. He speaks of wanting to start a family of his own, but feels trapped in limbo, anxious about passing unnamed trauma to his future children. "I'm not chasing headlines," he insists. "I'm chasing peace." When asked what he would say if he met Jay-Z tomorrow, Rymir pauses, then answers, "I'd ask, why didn't you just talk to me when Mum was alive? That's it. No yelling. I just want him to look me in the eye." Legal scholars watching this case call it a microcosm of American justice, a system ostensibly blind, but often squinting at bank balances. They note that most paternity disputes involving uncooperative fathers wrap within months, not decades. They also highlight a chilling precedent. If a billionaire can resist a statutory presumption for 14 years, the underlying law carries little force. Advocates fear the message to other would-be plaintiffs: unless you have 6 figures for attorneys, truth may be optional. The coming weeks promise high drama. If Jay-Z appears for the swab, lab technicians will likely run a standard short tandem repeat STR test, comparing alleles across 15 loci. A match probability of 99.9% or higher is considered definitive. Results could be returned within days, and under the judge's order, both parties would receive copies simultaneously. Should the match be positive, Jay-Z could conceivably file to keep the outcome sealed, arguing privacy for minor children. Rymir's side, anticipating that move, has already drafted motions to ensure disclosure. Ironically, a negative result could be sealed at Carter's discretion too, yet his PR team might choose to trumpet it publicly to silence doubters. Either way, the moment the envelope opens, someone's narrative collapses. If the result is positive, questions immediately pivot to statute of limitations on potential criminal charges. In New York, certain sex crime statutes were recently extended, though retroactivity remains murky. Some commentators argue prosecutors might still decline to pursue decades-old allegations, especially without testimonial corroboration from Wanda, now deceased. Others counter that the mere confirmation of intercourse with a minor could provoke public outrage, sufficient to push an investigation. Corporate sponsors could freeze deals, boards could demand contingency plans, and museums might distance themselves from Jay-Z's philanthropic initiatives. Remember how quickly partnerships dissolved for other fallen icons. And what of Rymir in that scenario? He says he will not seek backdated child support, but legally he could press for reimbursement of educational and medical expenses. Though such suits are rare for adult children, more likely he would request amended documents, a new birth certificate, inclusion in family medical history, and, above all, acknowledgement. Dr. Coley hopes to leverage any victory into momentum for her legislative campaign, arguing that Rymir's struggle illustrates a systemic imbalance that demands reform. Yet the outcome could also be anticlimactic. Suppose the DNA proves no relation. Jay-Z would claim vindication, his attorneys citing it as evidence that the lawsuit was always baseless. Tabloids would move on, hip-hop Twitter might crack jokes for a day and shift back to release date debates. Rymir, however, would face a different reckoning. His mother's lifelong conviction would be disproved, and he'd be left searching for another father or living permanently with uncertainty. Critics might brand him a grifter, though he never asked for cash. The psychological blow could be profound, a grief no settlement could heal. One more possibility remains: Carter refusing again, risking contempt of court. For an average defendant, that could trigger fines or even temporary detention. For a figure of Jay-Z's stature, the optics alone could prove disastrous. Cameras outside the courthouse would beam images worldwide. A billionaire hip-hop legend escorted inside by deputies for defying a paternity order. In the era of cancel culture, memes travel faster than appeals. Whatever path emerges, the case has already shifted public perception. Young artists idolizing Jay-Z for his rags-to-riches narrative now wonder whether the climb included trampling the powerless. Fans comparing his lavish tweets, champagne bottles, Basquiat paintings to Rymir's modest life ask if wealth demands moral accounting. And ordinary parents, regardless of fandom, instinctively empathize with a grown man wrestling to confirm who he is. Rymir himself sums it up best: "Empires fall from the inside. Truth is like water. You can dam it, divert it, poison it, but sooner or later it finds a path." As August approaches, the dam looks increasingly fragile. Jay-Z's lawyers may craft elegant motions, PR teams may prep joint statements, but one sterile cotton swab could shred years of strategic silence. In that tiny spiral of DNA lies a billion-dollar brand, a grieving son's identity, and a precedent for how justice handles the intersection of fame and fatherhood. Whether the result pours forth like a cleansing tide or seeps out drop by drop, the world will be watching, and the echoes will ripple far beyond the Carter household.